Hello, every folks, and good morning. Welcome to another edition of Know Your Fried Chicken. Today we talk about the One Vision Vartan. This guy is magnificent. Basically, this guy is what I'm thinking they should be taking notes on when it comes to rebalancing Thunder God Sid for Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered, Remake, Reborn, who gives a damn. But whatever they decide to do, somebody needs to call up brakes and understand how to make an overpowered character amazing. So here's the deal. Essentially, this time around, the Vartan, unlike the standard versions, is actually a fully unique class. Just like before, he is the jack of all trades. However, he is your premier evasion tank. This guy manages to not only be one of your most versatile units, but also manages to be one of the hardest to actually touch. The kind of skillfulness that comes from his background and everything else comes from the fact that this guy is absolutely able to single-handedly hold a flank entirely on his own, but not because he's able to kill everything, it's because he's able to essentially rock builds that nobody else would possibly even dare to run. I mean, look at this case. He doesn't even have a shield, and his evasion is by far his highest stat. So let's go ahead and get into this real quick. So when it comes to the Vartan, first things first, let's go ahead and get this started with their weapon access, just to kind of lay the groundwork here. So we've got access to fist weapons, all fist weapons, so this is going to give us access to poison, going to give us access to MP removal, access to stun on a one-handed weapon. Now we've got daggers if we want a mind bonus, or if we want to have a bind effect. We've got access to axes, and obviously these are going to have spell casting variants later on down the line, but for example, if you wanted to have axes that are there for just breaching defense, or if you want to have an RT delay. Actually, in this particular case, what I was running on him was a build where he would essentially counter with an RT delay axe, and then attempt to roll a silence with his silver point, using the additional mind bonus from that thing to then repeatedly harass things with Ripple. So let's go back to the equipment real quick, because that will continue being relevant here. So we have access to all spears, we have access to all hammers. Remember that he is basically coming in with his SNES powers as well, so he comes with the ability to stab stuff with spears, as you do. Comes with all types of hammers, if you needed that anti-undead, if you wanted to have any of that consistent stun bonus, if you wanted to have the ones that are just simply there for knockback. One thing that you can do is use his incredibly high evasion to park him nearby a cliff and repeatedly have units come up. Look at those big juicy numbers that they're totally going to hit this time. They only need one more draw, you guys. It's fine. They're going to hit it big this time, right before getting insta-killed off a cliff. Anyway, continuing on, you've got access to combat stabs as well as casting stabs, and if you ever saw that fan art, or not fan art, it was actually official art of Canopus with him flying around with a staff, essentially this is the one time that it finally can come to life, where he has always been a castable sort of unit, but this is the first time that he actually can be reasonably threatening at it. And additionally, hell, if you wanted to have him flying around with whips, that's available to you as well. Sidearms? He gets all of them. Well, I think all of them, almost all of them, except for things like, you know, the boulders and inbuilt throwing rocks and what have you. We've got stuff like short bows, and then we've also got every single type of crossbow. This should already be spinning some gears just in terms of the kinds of equipment this guy can run. Again, bear in mind, he does not need to run a light shield to be freakishly evasive. So this guy is able to effectively run multiple weapons at the same time, giving him a lot of potential options. Because again, evasion only can get as high as like your maximum evasion from the front is 75%. Maximum from the side is going to be 55%, and then from the back is going to be sorry, got my numbers mixed up. So from the back, it's 55%. From the side, I think it's like 65%. Or, yeah, I think like 65%, and then 75% from the front. Either way, it caps out after a bit of a while, so you don't need to keep min-maxing it in most situations. But here's the thing. His skills have changed. They've gone and improved, and they've given him so much more survivability, than you would ever possibly expect reasonable. So, for example, El Colas wins and Huapango wins, which are kind of niche abilities before, depending on the situation. Like, for example, if you were running an Aaron still in something like Reborn, that had a lot of interesting edge cases with the Vartan in particular, especially if running a Slayer set. These skills were kind of just meh. They typically didn't get used very much in PSP, if ever, for that matter, and they didn't exist back in SNES. In this particular case, they've been reworked from the ground up. So Huapango wins. is going to be his bread and butter. That gives him sidestep and renewal. This means that while he's running his crazy high evasion and low defense, he's making up for that low defense by actually healing back the damage that he does take. This allows him to take more risky types of positions than many other evasive type of units. Additionally, we've got Ennokos wins, because you might be thinking, wait a minute, I'm just going to get completely fucked by AoEs, are you kidding me? You've got Ennokos that's going to give you reflection, as well as give you what is basically a basic heal for that action move instead. So you can go and kind of run both of these and then swap them out as you need to. If you're running yourself weak to a particular thing, it honestly doesn't hurt to run this guy with reflect damage or reflect magic. He does get access to both, and additionally, if you decided to go run it that way, bear in mind that you can stack the shard shield and the spiked shield to allow for 40% reflection on top of everything else. So if you wanted to get hilarious with the reflection while just basically healing back whatever damage you just took, you can do that with him. You've got Windshot, which is basically going to be a hyper beam, more or less. It's elemental-less, or element-less, I should say. It does void damage, so it's effectively kind of like the water spraying ability on the octopus. However, it's essentially a neutral beam that you fire forward. Due to the fact that it's not resisted by anything, it's pretty consistent. It is pretty expensive, but it's just kind of cool to have there. You've got the typical wards and such, but then you have some other ones that are kind of interesting here. I'm not honestly sure why he would use Opportunist, considering he doesn't really need to need to use Flank. He can already fly, but if he's grounded, I suppose that has a niche use case. Trajectory is really useful if running sidearms, but remember that while he's doing all this other stuff, if he's already capped off on health, if he's already running regeneration, there's nothing wrong with running a third action ability in terms of just using Absorb MP to then go offensively turn somebody's MP against them, because again, he's got magic stuff there as well. We'll get some more on that in a moment. Just kind of round it all off here. He does get Tactician 1 and 2. This is only in Chapter 4 right now. He does cap out at Field Alch 1, though. And if you want to do a bit better with those spells, he does get access to basic ranks of Clarity and Efficacy, which allows him to spam those big AoEs even more. So let me go ahead and explain their spell situation. So unlike the standard versions, when it comes to the spells, effectively this is what we're looking at. You got your standard missile spells that are available to them, as well as the burst spells. So these are the ones that are basically a close range. I usually compare it to Combustion from Dark Souls, just basically a close range, just like touch fireball kind of situation. And this applies to all elements, as well as one basic debuff and one basic buff. So, for example, in the case of water, which I'm running with here, he's going to be able to grant somebody sidestep if there's a lot of archers or something. If there's a particular healer or something that's maybe having a hard time dodging those arrows, you can go support them with that. Or if, for example, he's running into a lot of heavy units, something a bit slower, maybe something like a TK, maybe something like a dragon or whatnot. He's looking to make sure that they don't get their actions off while also trying to get their health down a bit. Something like Corrosion is pretty solid here. We'll get back to how that loops into his original equipment in just a moment, but Ripple, and basically all these burst spells in particular, this is where the magic happens. Effectively, these spells are what I would categorize as sort of the medium penetration tier, where your basic missile spells, sure, they'll be pretty solid against one enemy, and they'll be pretty efficient, but the burst spells are essentially going to be splashing that damage in an area right nearby. Given that they're already evading stuff, this gives them the ability to be an effective spellcaster without needing the actual range or anything else. They just simply regenerate and tank away damage. Essentially, they're redirecting damage straight into the dirt and then repurposing it into just drowning stuff with this weird punch bubble thing. Again, he's not limited to just water. Every element will have this. If you want to have your strength and strength and breach buffs coming from fire, if you want to have your true strike and your false strike or whatever else, or your stuns or what have you coming from lightning, every element is going to have something. He doesn't get light, he doesn't get dark, but all the other elements do have something. Anyway, personally, this is just one of my favorite was this particular playthrough. Now, to circle back to how this plays into everything else, remember that when it comes to the actual kind of bonuses from their equipment and what have you, for the purposes of landing debuffs, it does seem like offhand equipment will properly give you its bonuses. So, When it comes to something like this, he can again counter with an RT delay, but he's still pretty darn accurate with landing his debuffs when he needs to. He has a potential silence effect if he needs to go shut down a healer. If he needs to go slow something down to save somebody's life, he can again aggressively go for a RT delay off of this. If we go over to his finishers, if he needs to go MP drain something with a dagger, he's got that option. If he wants to hit something with a just direct slow off that axe, he's got that option as well. If he needs to directly stop something. Again, this is just Chapter 4, so he doesn't have all of his finishers as of yet. Haven't really done a crazy amount of grinding on this team or anything. But just to give you an idea that they will consistently be getting just like a ton of options. They can make just about everything work. It's really nuts how well they can make everything work, right? So, alright, with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about how they're actually used, because it's literally just as simple as you throw him out to whatever staircase you need blocked. You throw him out in many of the same ways as you would a knight. However, he's able to hold that position until a knight arrives, until somebody a bit hardier is able to take up that position. Essentially, the purpose of the Vartan is more or less like your paratrooper of your particular team here, being able to swoop in and hold that particular position for somebody else until they get there. Oftentimes, if you're in an absolute pinch, you can just have him heal and continue functioning. Alright, sorry, it was a bit of a loud noise in the background there, but like, let's say something as simple as mending seeds, due to the fact that they scale, will be enough to keep this guy running pretty much indefinitely. Even keeping something like ginseng on hand, just to keep him re-upping his regenerations. Oftentimes, he's just simply a feather step and a renewal away from getting completely back on his feet. This is a unit that loves to play it risky, but does a really good job of playing it risky. So like this run was one that was a essentially complete Iron Man run, so like no retreats, none of that. And he was put in a lot of risky positions, and still, basically he was consistently coming out on top. He was consistently surviving that whole thing. Considering how the up difficulty of fights in One Vision, this should give you a bit of an idea that he only took 2 injuries up to this point. And oftentimes, when it comes to One Vision Iron Man runs in particular, if a unit will be taking injuries, I will be fine taking those injuries on a unit rather than using the resources for it, because, you know, things like elixirs still exist. So, essentially, they can be brought back later. They are not taking a permanent loss for taking an injury, but this guy has never permanently died over the course of this run. This is one of those classes that, since the early versions of One Vision, has always been really, really solid. But this is why I was saying earlier that when it comes to Final Fantasy Tactics Remake, Rebirth, whatever, whenever they decide to make it, however they decide to make it, this is how you make a veteran unit feel amazing without turning them absolutely godlike and just crushing everything in the field. Just his ability to handle fights by a million cuts, more or less, gives him that feel of being this amazing, badass freaking veteran guy, you know? Just his ability to one-shot stuff off of cliffs, making use of his flight and knockback abilities from a heavy maul type of weapon, along with his high evasion and, you know, tendency to keep restoring his own health and stuff like that. It's a really, really cool way to make this guy function. Additionally, one little kind of quiet benefit that this guy gets is the fact that if we compare him with everybody else, his actual attack stats are pretty decently high. His defense is intentionally left low. This means that when it comes to being the evasion tank, he's going to consistently do that job. He's going to always be appealing for the AI to attack, because he is specifically designed to be a moving target. And whenever they see him, they will gladly go after him, and he will more than likely, unless you put him in like a 6v1 or something, and even then it's a maybe, come out just like smelling like roses. So either way, that's what this class is all about. Just evading things, mixing and matching different weapons for different effects, whether you wanted to go completely min-maxed on that evasion, maybe have more knockback abilities, more reflection abilities, maybe you wanted to have him min-maxing more into the whole casting side of things. Like, for example, earlier I mentioned that when it comes to their spells and things, they're not exactly a powerhouse out of the box, but if, for example, you wanted to give him a mana totem and then wanted to give him a staff, or not a staff, but a dagger on top of this, if you wanted to, for example, just run him with a staff and turn him into a straight dedicated caster, you have that option. Basically, whatever options you would like, he'll make work. In fact, one of the funniest builds to me to this day is the fact that you can run him with dual axes, despite the fact that he's got no ability to actually equip two axes. So you can just run a basic fighting axe and a basic throwing axe. Again, do with that as you will. This is a bit on the heavy side, though. I want to point out, if you're a min-maxy sort, this guy's evasion is comical. Like, we already talked about the fact that it gets pretty high. Now, this is just in Chapter 4, right? So let's say you give him some avoidance claws or something. We'll give him a guitar. We'll give him a Boulder Shield. He's got his gambeson. He's got his padded leggings. Up this by another 30 if you're thinking to give him something like the main gouge. Let's go ahead and give him a Ring of Alacrity. So Alacrity would put him up to 176. You could give him the Scout gear. I mean, basically, with proper endgame equipment, from what I saw, his maximum evasion is about 400. It's ridiculous. Like, this guy can evade like nobody else. And again, he's healing that entire time. So, anyways, yeah, that's kind of about that. That's the Vartan in a nutshell. That's why everybody loves this guy. Frankly, I don't think there's anyone that I've spoken to that was running through One Vision and ever decided not to use Canopus, because he's just that good. Not overpowered, he's just that good. He's exactly right. Anyway, so that's about that. Y'all have yourselves a good one, and I will see you in the next one.